Hi, my name is Layla and welcome to my weekly analysis for the week commencing the 20th of August 2017. And today I'm going to be talking about dollar CAD, dollar yen and Aussie dollar. So let's start with the weekly chart on dollar CAD, and I want to talk about the key levels that we are currently at. And I tend to look at charts where I think that there is a decision point that is either being met or is imminent. And at the moment we are in a bit of a zone with dollar CAD because there's a couple of things going on in its way that we need to assess in terms of whether they are broken or bounced from. So currently we've got a zone between 125 and 124. I have spoken about this level in the past because both of these levels correlate with EMAs. So we've got the 200 on the weekly and we have the 50 on the monthly. So in this zone is potentially an area where I felt the price might have a reaction, and it's actually reacted to the 50 EMA at around about 124. Didn't quite test 124, the round number, but it did test the 50 EMA, and rather logically it has bounced from that, which is why we've had this pullback after a decent rundown. We've now had a pullback where the market has taken a bit of a breather, met an obstacle in its path, and is now using it to push away from, and that's a combination of the level at 128 and the 10 EMA on the weekly. So all of this makes perfect sense in terms of its behavior, and it's now a case of what it's going to try and do in this particular area. So I need to get a bit closer to this. Now what I am thinking is that because we are actually reacting to some quite powerful major EMAs on both the monthly and the weekly, that we may well be due a way in which this market might try and work its way out more towards the upside. But that doesn't mean that it might not be selling in the interim. So it's a bit difficult to precisely decide how long this is going to take. We might spend the next week selling off. We then meet the support level that we require in order to confirm that support is rock solid here before we get the bounce. So as to whether what I'm describing is going to take this week alone or maybe a couple of weeks, it's difficult for me to exactly explain in terms of time how long that might take. However, what I can describe is the potential movements that it might be making and what's in its way. So we have here a line at 125.70, which correlates more clearly on the daily with a level of resistance that price broke out of, and I think it's a bit easier if I can just show you that we had this rather large engulfing bar that then pushed towards the upside, and we have this bar here that would have gone up to just about touching the 10 EMA on the weekly chart, and it's actually sold off, which has given us the conditions of following through with a downtrend. So we've had a push down, we've had a pullback, and we've had the process looking like it's going to start again. So theoretically we should see a little bit more selling in this particular zone, and it is possible, based on what I've been saying about the major EMAs presenting quite a lot of support, that we might end up with a retest of either this low or we end up with a higher low, which then potentially might send price higher. It may want to carve out a bit of a deeper floor, but the fundamental information I'm trying to impart to you is that we may be in an area where the market tries to actually make a bit of a deeper retracement to the upside. So if we look at the daily, we'll be able to see a little bit more about what I'm talking about, where there was a little bit of resistance just here at 125.70, which price broke out of, and now rather logically it's testing it as a support level. However, this sell-off bar on Friday is a lower close and it is a lower low, so there is quite a lot of weight in this market for potentially testing down to 125 or even 124. Both of those would work absolutely fine in terms of giving us confirmation of this being potentially a bit more of a firmer base than we currently can be sure of, and by that I mean it's good to have things tested at least twice for us to confirm whether there's potentially a well-defended level here. So as I say, we need to take out price at 125.70, which is currently where price is sitting, and we also need to see whether price reacts strongly enough to 125 or whether it carves through it and actually wants to retest and match these lows at 124, which would also be a retest of the 50 EMA on the monthly chart. So potentially, what I'm saying in summary, we may have a little bit of a sell-off for the week ahead, and then we might find that carving out for the latter part of the week and perhaps next week we might see an occasion where price starts to move to the upside. Now the alternative version to this is that price is quite happy here, although do bear in mind that to me this looks a little bit weighted to the downside. We might see that this is actually the support level that it requires in order to make another attempt at 128, which would also lock it into the 50 EMA on the daily. So there's quite a lot of potential for price to move in quite short distances between basically what is a bit of an EMA sandwich in terms of what's offering resistance, which is the 50 EMA at around about 128, and what is offering some support at between 125 and 124. So do look out for those levels. As I say, at the moment, I think it would be perfectly feasible, considering it's been in a downtrend, that we might see a little bit more selling. I'm not necessarily calling whether it's going to take out this low and continue down lower. We've had much more buying than we've had in recent times, so definitely this is a more well-defended area than where we've been having little pullbacks in the past, like here and here. So yes, the levels to beat 125.70 and 125, where we might find a little bit of support. Okay, let's move on now to dollar yen. And again, we are in a slightly similar position, as in we are currently sitting on top of a 200 EMA on the weekly chart for dollar yen. And this is now starting to look like it's caught in between a range, which is between 109 and 1435, just above it. So this is potentially where we might find another bounce higher. The reason why this could be complicated in terms of calling its particular direction is because this bar here is currently responding to the fact that these EMAs on the weekly chart are starting to get themselves in the right order. So we've got the 10 and the 20 starting to come down, like they're pressing price in a resistance type of formation, if you like, the pair of them, the 20 and the 10. Sorry, the 10 and the 20. The red one, of course, is the 50, and that's going to be eventually crossed over by the 20, which of course is another quite bearish EMA sort of signal. So at the moment, again, we're caught between 2 points, which is this support level at 109 and a potential resistance level, which is actually just here, and this would be, in terms of price, this resistance level is approximately 111. It's 111 round number. So that's potentially where we might find that price is going to be moving between. Now, given that this is a little bit of a it is a bar, which basically means that yes, bears have stepped in, but it can also mean that because it never really made a strong lower low and a lower close, if you like, that there's potential for a little bit more buying in this area. So feasibly, we might see a little bit of a green bar pulling back up into, as I say, the 111 area, or potentially even lower, say maybe the 110.75 area, which is approximately there, 110.65, which lines up quite well with this recent doji. And dojis on higher time frames are obviously consolidation areas on much lower time frames, so they're quite useful for just getting a visual level of where price might be trying to interact. So feasibly, my analysis of the dollar yen is that we might have a little bit more buying. That then of course might produce a lower high, in which case we make another attempt at the 200, which may well be the point at which it becomes broken. We've had a go here, we didn't quite test it here, and as I say, it is a well-defended level, but it looks to me like it's actually trying to get a bit closer, because if this had been exceptionally well defended in terms of buyers, I think we would have had a much more solid green bar. But this has had potential to move all the way up to, as I say, the 110.65 area, and it's been pressed back down into support at 109. We may see a little bit more buying, but probably less of it, which may then result, as I say, in this lower high that might be the beginning of a cycle which starts to push price lower. Now we've got to get through, as I say, the 200 EMA on the weekly, which is going to be a little bit of an obstacle, and plus we are at the round number as well. So this is going to be a tough obstacle. However, it might try and work its way through it, as I say, by trying to cycle lower. Now let's have a look at the daily time frame so that we can see what that means. So in this particular instance, I think it's a lot more easy to see that these are actually quite well defended levels. Let me just make this a tiny bit smaller. This, of course, being the obvious retest of this particular area here, where price broke through but started to climb above it. Then we retested it, and of course, if you make a higher low, if you double test and you make a higher low, there's every chance that you might try and see price trying to move to the upside. And the fact that it's retested this high, all of this makes perfect sense. It's very symmetrical, which is slightly, it's not unusual, but it does have a very obvious appearance. And the thing about obvious appearances is they can start to repeat. But anyway, back to where we are at the moment. This has actually had quite a strong buying step in, but as you see, the sellers have really pressed it back down. So I see a bit of a fight coming out in here. So we may see, judging by how long this tail is, and obviously this little doji here was a turning point as well. This is, as I say, a well-defended level at 109. So we might see a little bit more buying. But if we get a lower high than that, then then the downward pressure is not just in terms of what I would call price bars. The downward pressure is also in cycles, and when we see cycles being used as direction, if you like, it can provide much more pressure to that particular direction. Just for instance, you see how this market here cycled higher. Once it got going into a bit of a habit, it just keeps going until it meets something that it can no longer fight through, as it were, which of course was this 1435 level. And similarly here, not quite so neat and tidy, but it started to create nice little pullbacks, tiny little pullback, continues down, pullback, continues down. So this market thinks that it wants to go lower, but there's a lot more buying that stepped in to fight this particular direction. So feasibly, as I say, 109, apologies, 109 is the level that we need to break through. And if we certainly push back up to, let's just say, where's my crosshair? If I'm saying somewhere around here, that would connect it with the 10 EMA on the daily. Somewhere around the, as I said before, actually this is lower, sorry, apologies. If I see price coming into 110, and that's well defended at the 10 EMA on the daily, then I start to see price turning around towards the downside, so I see downward pressure coming in, then that may well give me more of an idea about the fact that it's actually trying to press through this level here and take out the 200 EMA on the weekly. Okay, so then we now move to the Aussie dollar. Aussie dollar is itself, of course, dealing with a major EMA on the monthly, which is the 50, and it's also at the round number of 0.008. So, unsurprisingly, it has had a little bit of reversal, and as you can see, it's tested into the tops of the bars that it was that it has recently taken out in terms of the highs that it needed to pass in order to get momentum, to increase its momentum, if you like. So let's have a look at the weekly, and 1 second while I just make this more in the right position. I've spoken about this market last week, and I was talking about how I thought that price might try and sell off and connect with the 10 EMA on the weekly chart, and that I thought that the level that it was trying to aim at in terms of price was 0.735. It's more or less done that. It's actually pushed in quite nicely. So it's no surprise that it did it all in one week. So we had our press down, which is where this low would be situated, and then it spent probably the last 2 or 3 days buying. And again, I see this as an opportunity for the market to attack this level at the 800 level, which also combines with the 200 EMA on the weekly chart. So a lot of charts have got EMAs that are converging on different time frames in the same place, and that's quite powerful. So do be aware when you think of coming up to those kinds of areas about the significance of that. That a lot of people in the market will see those and they'll understand what that means. So they're good places for people to set their entries and exits, and so they can produce an awful lot of activity. So you don't want to get caught in the washout, as it were. Let's have a look at the daily, and we can get a bit of a no, I don't want that. Bit of a closer idea about what we're looking at here. So it's starting to look a little bit like it's trying to cycle higher. In all honesty, if it gets to 108 and starts to look a little bit like this bit of price action on the left, which is consolidated and choppy and it's got high tails, I could feasibly see what I would describe as a matching high that then would possibly result in a deeper sell-off, simply because we've confirmed that this level is a problem, and so therefore it's self-confirming, and therefore people will think this is a good place to enter the market to sell. But at the moment, it's got to get there in order to confirm this. The other way in which this might work is that it actually pushes higher, but doesn't actually match the high. And by higher, I can potentially see an area around the 79.67. So let's say 79.70 sort of area, where price might become a little bit stuck, and that could produce the lower high that forces price to go lower as well. So effectively, it might test a matching high to go lower, or it might produce a lower high from here to go lower. Either way, the result would be a little bit of buying followed by potentially a deeper sell-off. It's just where it's going to buy into. So watch out for this level at, as I said, hang on, just get my crosshairs. Watch out for this level here at 79, between 79.60 and 79.70. Watch out for that. And if we do get a lower high from this point, then feasibly we would be coming down to test the 78.40, 78.35 level again, and that might well mean that price then knocks into the 50 EMA that's coming up underneath on the daily, which then of course could possibly find price has the impetus again to make another attack. So it's either going to be lower high, press into the matching low, meet the 50 and push higher, or it's going to be push higher, match the high here and then press lower, which then of course might result in it knocking into the 50 EMA on the daily, which of course could produce another impetus of buying. So in summary, because I know that's quite a lot of information to take in one go, in summary, we could see a little bit more buying in order to go short. So that's probably the best way to look at it. Watch out for the levels at 0800, obviously, 08,000, whatever you want to call it. Watch out for that. That is a strong resistance level, and support is being provided around about the round number of 078 to 0740. So watch out for that zone as a support level as well. And in terms of direction, just bear in mind we might be going through a little bit of buying before we'll be going lower. Okay, so that's everything I want to say about those three markets for this week. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. Bye bye.